Many of our games last year that we were working on, we had been working on for 3 or 4 years. And so we finished a lot of games last year to get them out to market. And one of our games was Star Wars Squadrons we were working on. And so we partner with Disney and Lucasfilm. As you would imagine, rightfully so, they're very particular about quality, particularly around sound and music. And so we were, April, and we didn't have the score done, and there was no world and no scenario that we were going to be bringing an orchestra together to finish this score. And so our sound designer and music directors pulled together, and they recorded one instrument at a time, and then they brought the score together. And not only did we get an approval from Lucas, but we just won an award for this music that they created. It was just unbelievable, the perseverance and the resilience that the teams demonstrated. We had other scenarios where we have these very large stages where we gather animation data and movement and motion. We have these little balls that go in people's joints, and it captures the data and the motion capture. Well, of course, we couldn't be in these stages, and people didn't have these in their homes, so we had these X suits that we would send to people's homes, and they were able to put them on their kids, on their spouses, on their aunts or whatever, and collect their data from the motion from people wearing these suits to put in the game. So they got very creative about how to keep the train on the tracks to get the games done. Well, diversity and inclusion is super important to us, very personal for me. We created a women's ultimate team, ERG, about 5 years ago in the company, and we have 2,200 members in the organization. And that organization created an inclusion framework for our game creators to use. And what it is essentially is we were so inspired by the Gina Davis Foundation and the work that she has done to audit gender representation in characters. And so we created something similar to be intentional and to thoroughly evaluate how representation is showing up in our games. And it's been an incredibly powerful tool for us to evaluate really early on in our game development. And our game creators essentially take the inclusion framework and they run their dialogue, scripts, characters, worlds through the inclusion framework. We haven't necessarily set quotas or numbers. I just want our creators to be intentional about what they're creating and how we're showing up in the world. And it's been incredibly powerful. I think we've progressed and advanced far faster than we would have without the inclusion framework. And I also believe we have done more than we would have if we had had set numbers. And so I think the creators are so inspired by inclusion, diversity, equity, that they use the framework to evaluate how they're showing up in the world. I think culture matters a tremendous amount. We're very clear about a zero tolerance policy around harassment, misbehavior in our culture. And we created a very robust framework around communication. And if you see it, speak it, whether it's happening to you or happening to someone else. And so we have many avenues that people can communicate to us with what's going on in the company. I also believe that it starts with leadership. 50% of my team that were running studios were women. And I believe that you have to set the standard and the example. And 2 of those women on my leadership team, half of their leadership team were women. If you can see it, you can be it. I wanted to start there. And so I think it's incredibly important for that to cascade into our organization. Those platforms are providing a service that I think is meaningful to our players. Over the pandemic, I have twin 17-year-olds, and they spent a lot of time in their room, and I would go into my son's room, open the door. After the shock and horror of seeing his messy room, I would notice that he was playing games with his iPad. He'd have FaceTime up, and then his iPhone, he would have Discord up, and then he'd have the game up. And it was just staggering to me that he didn't have an experience that was all integrated in. And so I just see so much opportunity and potential for us to streamline and integrate that. And it's an area that we're spending a lot of time and focus of streamlining a social interaction and social experience that you can visually see your friends, you can communicate outside of the game, about the game, and then have the in-game experience. I think there's a significant opportunity and path ahead for us to bring this together and make it more seamless for our players.